Moving into Eric's house was supposed to be the beginning of a fresh chapter for us. But the moment I stepped through the door, an uneasy feeling washed over me. Eric, a talented painter, had hung his latest work in the living room, a portrait of a beautiful woman with long flowing hair and piercing eyes. From the moment I saw it, I felt a deep discomfort. The woman's eyes seemed unnervingly alive, following me around the room as if they were trying to convey something sinister hidden within their gaze. I think it's looking at me, Eric.
It's just a painting, Jamie. You're imagining things.
But I wasn't imagining anything. Every time I entered the room, I felt her gaze on me, like she was trying to communicate something. As the days passed, I began seeing her move, or at least I thought I did. It started small, with her eyes shifting slightly in the frame. And then one night, I had a nightmare. The woman stepped out of the painting, her cold hand gripping my arm as she whispered a single word into my ear.
Run!
I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart racing. I could still feel her presence in the room, her eyes burning into me even in the dark. I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted Eric the next morning, insisting he move the painting out of the bedroom. After some resistance, he finally agreed, relocating it to his office. But instead of feeling relief, things only got worse. Eric became obsessed with the painting, spending hours in his office talking to himself in low, frantic whispers. When he finally emerged, his arms were covered in scratches, as if he'd been in a fight. I asked him about it, but he shrugged me off, saying it was nothing, just an accident. But I knew better. I knew the painting was doing something to him. One night, after Eric had fallen asleep, I sneaked into his office, determined to find out what was going on. The painting hung on the wall, the woman's eyes now more intense than ever. They seemed to follow me as I crossed the room. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, snapping a picture of the portrait. I quickly ran an image search, and what I found made my blood run cold. The woman in the painting was real. Her name was Anya, a young woman who had been reported missing years ago. The last person seen with her was her boyfriend, who had also vanished without a trace. There was a coincidence when I looked at Anya's picture. The earrings that Anya was wearing were identical to the pair that Eric gave me last month when we celebrated our 1-month anniversary. My heart pounded as I connected the dots. Could Eric be involved in Anya's missing? My eyes darted around the room, searching for clues. That's when I noticed a blank canvas on an easel, set up as if Eric was preparing to start a new painting. But it wasn't the canvas that caught my attention. It was the knife lying next to his brushes. A sharp, clean blade that had no place in a painter's studio. Suddenly, I felt a chill run down my spine. I turned back to the painting, and this time, Anya's expression had changed. Her mouth moved, forming the word I had heard in my nightmare.
Run!
I spun around, ready to leave, but Eric was standing in the doorway, his face twisted in a mix of anger and madness.
What are you doing in here, Jamie?
I was just... I stammered, backing away.
You shouldn't have snooped around, babe,
he said, stepping closer.
Now you know too much.
My breath caught in my throat as he revealed the truth. Eric was the one who had killed Anya, driven by some twisted obsession. But now, he needed a new muse, a new canvas to save him from his guilt.
And that's going to be you, Jamie.
He whispered, raising the knife. I bolted, running out of the room as fast as I could. My heart pounded in my ears as I sprinted towards the door, fumbling with my phone to dial 911. But Eric was fast, faster than I expected. He grabbed me just as I reached the front door, pulling me back with terrifying strength. Please, Eric, you don't have to do this.
Stop it. I need a new muse, Jamie.
Just as I thought it was all over, I heard the wail of sirens in the distance. The police stormed the house, guns drawn, quickly subdued him, wresting the knife from his hand. He was cuffed and dragged away, his eyes wild with a mix of rage and despair. They took him away. As the police searched the house, they found more than enough evidence to link Eric to Anya's missing, her belongings hidden in his office, the same place where he had kept the painting. And they also found Anya's decaying body in the basement of Eric's house. I never imagined that the person I had been dating for the past few months was a deranged killer. Before I left, I turned back to the house one last time. The painting was still there, hanging in the office. Anya's eyes met mine, but this time, they weren't filled with fear or sorrow. They were filled with gratitude. It all started with a single cat. Jason had found it one evening, this tiny, shivering ball of fur, abandoned near a park bench. He begged me to let him keep it.
It's just one cat, Liv.
He said, his eyes pleading.
Look at it, it needs me.
I hesitated, but eventually gave in. One cat wouldn't hurt, right? It was cute after all, and Jason had always had a soft spot for animals. But that's where it began, and it didn't end there. A week later, Jason brought home 5 more cats. 5! The apartment, which had once been cozy and clean, now smelled of litter boxes and fur. The cats scratched the furniture, knocked things off shelves, and left hairballs in the corners. It wasn't even about the mess anymore. It was about how out of control things were getting. I tried to talk to him. Jason, this is too much. We don't have room for all these cats. He just shrugged, grinning like it was no big deal.
They're rescues. They need me. Who else is going to take care of them?
I let it go again, feeling guilty for wanting to say no, but deep down something about it all felt wrong. And soon enough, it got worse. One night, I came home late from work. I stepped into the apartment and immediately noticed something was off. The air felt heavier, the smell stronger than usual. And then I saw it. A large metal cage in the middle of the living room. Inside were rats, dozens of them, squeaking and scratching at the bars, their tiny bodies wriggling over each other. Jason was kneeling by the cage, tossing in old bread, like he was feeding birds at the park. I froze, my heart pounding. What the hell is this? He didn't even look up.
They were going to be used for experiments. I couldn't let that happen.
My stomach twisted. Jason, this is insane! Rats! You can't bring rats into the apartment!
They need me.
He said softly, his eyes finally meeting mine. They were wide, almost desperate.
No one else cares about them, Liv. You don't understand.
I didn't know what to say. He always made me feel like I was the selfish one, like I was heartless for not wanting to live in a zoo. But this was too much. Soon it wasn't just rats. The apartment became a nightmare. Cages, aquariums, scratching posts. Every inch of space filled with something alive. Birds squawked from their cages in the kitchen. Hamsters ran on wheels in the bathroom. I couldn't take it anymore. But Jason? He was lost in it. He barely even noticed me anymore. He spent all his time caring for the animals, talking to them like they were his only family. I tried to talk, to make him see reason, but it was like speaking to a wall. And then he brought home the dog. It wasn't just any dog. It was a huge, wild-looking mutt with matted fur and eyes that gleamed with something I couldn't place. The moment I saw it, I felt a cold fear creep up my spine. It looked dangerous, rabid even. "What are you doing, Jason?" I asked, backing away from the snarling dog. "That thing could kill us!"
Hey, it's okay. He's fine.
Jason said, reaching down to pet the dog's head. It snapped at his hand, but he didn't flinch.
He's just scared. He'll calm down once he gets used to us.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "No! This is it! You can't keep bringing wild animals into the house. We're done!" But he just looked at me, that same pleading look he always used.
He needs me, Liv. No one else would take him.
That night, I couldn't sleep. The noise was constant, The birds flapping, the rats scratching, the cats knocking things over, and then I heard it, the soft creak of a cage door opening. My heart stopped. I sat up in bed, straining to hear. There it was again, scratching, scurrying. The rats. They were out. I shook Jason awake, panic rising in my chest. "Jason, the rats!" He groaned and sat up, rubbing his eyes.
Relax, Liv. I'll get them back in the cage.
I jumped out of bed, my skin crawling at the thought of those tiny creatures running loose. I grabbed my things and made a decision. Jason didn't argue. He just nodded, too tired to care. He was already trying to catch the escaped rats. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door, but as I reached the hallway, I froze. The dog was standing there, blocking the exit. Its eyes gleamed in the dim light and its lips curled back, revealing sharp yellowed teeth. A low growl rumbled from its throat. "Jason!" I called, my voice trembling. "Get the dog, now!" But he was too busy with the rats to hear me. The dog's growl grew louder, its muscles tensing. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew what was coming. I screamed, diving to the side just as it snapped at where I'd been standing. Jason came running, throwing himself between me and the dog. The dog sank its teeth into Jason's hand and wouldn't let go. Jason screamed in pain, telling me to run. Through gritted teeth, he said,
I'm sorry, Liv.
I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted for the door, my legs trembling beneath me. My hands shook as I dialed 911. When the operator picked up, I could barely get the words out. "Help! Please! He's keeping animals. Too many. It's dangerous." I never went back. I didn't want to know what happened after I left. Everything was so exhausted.
I hadn't seen Grandma in 3 years. After the divorce, Mum and I moved across the country, and we couldn't afford to visit. Or maybe Mum just didn't want to. But when her new boyfriend gave her tickets to Costa Rica, she suddenly thought it was a great idea for me to spend a week with Grandma.
Come on, Ava, Grandma's great. She'll teach you how to knit and bake cookies.
As I arrived at Grandma's house, something felt off. She looked the same, white hair, blue eyes, but she seemed distant, almost cold.
"Hello, my dear,"
she said, smiling in a way that didn't quite reach her eyes. The first few days were okay. We baked cookies and talked, but there were moments when Grandma acted strangely. She forgot my name once, calling me every name she could think of. What was even stranger was when Grandma warned me not to go into the basement, giving only a brief explanation.
"It's dangerous. If you go down there, I'll punish you in the most painful way."
I swallowed hard and nodded, unsure of what to say. Then she smiled and said she was just joking, but the way she laughed sent chills down my spine. I forced a smile, but I couldn't hide the disappointment. That basement had once been a treasure trove of memories. But I told myself it was for my safety and tried to push the thought aside. That night, I woke up with a dry throat and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I passed through the dimly lit hallway, I saw her, Grandma, sitting in her old armchair in the living room. She wasn't knitting or reading like she usually did. Instead, she was completely still, her body rigid, eyes locked on me. Her eyes flicked toward me, but they weren't the warm eyes I remembered. They darted back and forth, unnervingly fast, as if they were searching for something, or someone. My heart pounded in my chest as I backed away. She didn't respond, didn't move, just kept staring with those wild, rolling eyes. I turned and bolted back to my room, slamming the door behind me, trying to shake the image from my mind. The next morning, I cautiously asked her about it. "Grandma, were you up last night? You were staring at me." She looked at me, puzzled.
"I don't remember that, dear. Must have been sleepwalking or something."
But there was a heaviness in her voice that didn't sit right with me. Her tone was deeper than usual, and her movements seemed sluggish, almost disjointed. All day I watched her closely. She walked with a strange, uneven gait, and her speech was off, like it took extra effort to form words. Something was terribly wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. That night, as she slept, I heard something, faint, muffled cries. I followed the strange sound out of the room and down the hallway. They were coming from the basement. I froze, listening intently, and my blood ran cold when I recognized the voice. It was Grandma's voice, but it was pleading, desperate. Without thinking, I grabbed the old key hanging by the kitchen door and crept down to the basement. The stairs creaked under my weight and the air grew colder with each step. When I reached the bottom, I could barely breathe. There, on an old surgical table, was my grandmother, my real grandmother. Her head was bandaged, but I could see where the scalp had been crudely cut, revealing bone beneath. Her eyes were missing, just empty sockets staring up at the ceiling. Tears streamed down her face as she whimpered.
Ava, don't! It's not me. Up there. It's not me.
Grandma! I rushed to her side, fumbling with the chains that bound her to the table. I'll get you out of here, I promise. But as I struggled with the lock, I heard the basement door creak open behind me. I turned slowly, my blood turning to ice as I saw the other grandma. No, the thing pretending to be her, standing at the top of the stairs. Its eyes, no longer darting, were fixed on me with a cold, furious stare.
Oh, Ava, you shouldn't have come down here.
It said, its voice hollow and echoing in the small space.
Now you know too much.
I backed away, my hands shaking. What the hell are you?
I am what you see. I take what is mine. Memories, life, identity. But this body and this mind is too weak. I want yours.
In a flash, the thing leaped off the stairs and was on me before I could react, its hands like icy claws gripping my arms with inhuman strength. I screamed, but it was drowned out by the creature's growl, a deep sound that sent a jolt of terror through my entire body. My head hit the cold stone, and for a moment, the world spun, dark spots dancing in my vision. I struggled against its grip, but it was too strong, its fingers digging painfully into my skin. Its face inches from mine, so close I could feel its icy breath against my cheek.
But now, you'll end up just like her, a hollow shell.
The creature's other hand moved to my face, and I felt its cold fingers brush against my temple. The touch sent a shockwave of pain through my skull, like needles being driven into my brain. I cried out, thrashing against its hold, but it only tightened its grip. Stop! Please! Don't do this! But the creature only smiled wider, its teeth unnervingly sharp, almost predatory.
You're mine now, Ava. And when I'm done, no one will ever know you existed.